What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be covering the Vitae package in R for Curriculum Vitae, or however you pronounce it. So a CV, all of your work history, education, accomplishments, milestones, etc., ad nauseum. This document, basically a resume. What is a great way of maintaining a CV in a consistent and pretty way? So I actually needed to provide an updated resume for the application process for this online college I intend to go to for my bachelor's, or I'm looking at doing all that. So I needed to get a resume together. I didn't like what I had, and it's an old resume. It was in Word. It was just my same bare bones template I've had for like 10 years that I got from some career help place. It was crap. So I know about LaTeX, and I know LaTeX can do a lot of great typesetting for CVs, and that those are options, but that LaTeX is very verbose, and it would be a whole slew of new packages, and it would be a really crazy process to put together in a short amount of time, because I needed to get these like deliverables in to this to get into this admission process. So I needed to get a CV done, but I also wanted it to be, not only just done, but also to look nice, to be able to serve multiple purposes in the future if I wanted to use this for anything else, but also to be easily maintained, manageable, and I can easily update it and change it at will. So what are my options? Usually some sort of programming or markup language, something along those lines. So what I found was the Vitae package in R, which basically has some LaTeX templates. You fill it in with some data from some R functions, and it creates a compiled and very nice looking Curriculum Vitae, CV, resume. So there's a bunch of different things in this package I'm going to cover, but for the most part, it's a couple of functions, probably 2 or 3 functions that will really do the main amount of content in your CV with this package, and the rest of it's just like YAML metadata that ends up being displayed. But you can see a copy of my CV on my GitHub. It's right here. It's one of my pinned projects. You can find all my links in the description of the video or on the main page of my YouTube. But on there is the CV, and in here I have like all my folders and everything. And so here's my CV PDF. Everything's compiled into this single document, just explaining a little bit about what, why, how, some stuff I wanted to do. But my finished CV looks like this. It'll take a little second to load. But like this is what the LaTeX template looks like. And there are some things you can modify and change about it, different sections you can add. But this is the template I have, and I'm using the awesome CV template. So I've tested out a bunch of the other ones, and this is the one I like the most. Now, I have some things set out. Fonts was generated automatically. Image I have for just like the image, my face right there. And then R contains all of the R script data that feeds into the resume. You can use, here's the cool part about the Vitae package, data-driven CV, which means that you can have sources feeding from like ORCID is one of their main supported things they have. I signed up for one just for the hell of it, but ORCID is like some, like kind of like a social network in a way for like researchers. Sign in here really quick. I'm not really using this to feed anything. I just wanted to sign up for it just to have it and to check it out. But it's like kind of like a social network for researchers. But while that loads, so in here, instead of doing something like a CSV, which is turning into be a pain, especially with SCIM as a terminal application, and just issues with using commas as punctuation, or maybe I had to use like a tab separated file. It was just a pain in the ass. So really what I decided to do was just do tribbles in R, so a row-wise tibble. And I'll explain about how to do this and what to do, but this is like feeding all of my main sections of my CV. So you can see I got a bunch of stuff here, and I'll explain what this does. But basically, I'm creating a bunch of tibble objects that are fed into the R Markdown document that is compiled into the LaTeX template CV, and this feeds all the data into there just by running the script and then saying that these objects are now available to the R Markdown document, and then the R Markdown document uses these objects, displays the data into the template, and there we go. So here's what like an ORCID profile would look like. I got like my ORCID ID, and then using the public facing API, you can take this with some of the functions in the Vitae package and use this to feed everything. So you could just update your ORCID profile and everything would be pulled into the template. That's an option. I didn't really want that. I wanted to have a little bit more granular control over everything. So I just did tribbles at this point, but this is an option. So let's dive into like what you're going to be doing with it. So this is just my notes here. Let me actually open up my CV. I don't think this is what it is. Is it? I don't think so. I'm going to open up a couple files here so we can see what we're working with. There we go. Okay. All right, so in Vitae, it is a great package with minimal functions and minimal stuff you're going to have to learn to actually get stuff done. So the workflow is that you can build out these CVs by using a lot of YAML data, sections, just like, single H1 level section headers, which is what creates these. I should just keep it open, honestly. But each of these main sections, like employment, is done with an H1 header. So like in mine, you can see that I have employment, education. These are done with the H1 headers. You have a lot of YAML section stuff that handles it. So all this YAML data is what appears in the header of the document, as well as like what LaTeX template I'm using. The about me, you can specify your own color with a hex code without the actual hash symbol. A date, if you want to have it as a constantly, every time you recompile this document, the date is a brand new date, or the current day. You just did, sys_time. You could use the lubridate now function, but I just did this because, why have whole nother package dependency when I could just do sysdate. I have an image for my profile image. Oops. And then just basic data. And these are most of the options that you can use for YAML metadata. I've pretty much used all of the things. There is like one for Twitter I removed because I don't want people looking at my social media if I'm sending them my CV. Like that's not what I want them to look at. But these are most of the options. But now all of the options, and again, all these documents are going to be in the GitHub repo for my R package review video series. All this stuff is going to be in that GitHub repo, which will be in the description. But these are like all of the YAML header options you can do, a little description of what they are. If you're unsure about which, like if you need quotes around something, you can do some things like plain text like this. You can do some things in quotes. I don't really think you even need quotes unless it's like something with spaces. But in this case, just do quotes. It's not going to hurt anything. Now, like the template, you're just going to do like this. It's just going to be that type of syntax. I have the About Me section actually shows like this whole, italics up here in the header. This is all done as the About Me section in YAML, and this is all has to be like a single sentence. The head color is, again, a hex code. So this 999 or 990,000, whatever, this number is what makes all these red accents. All the color red accents are done with that single hex code. So that's like your theme color. I chose red or nice maroon. The date, because it's an R function, an inline R function, I have to do backticks, but because it's YAML, I actually have to surround that backtick R function with double quotes. And then, the link to the image for my profile picture or my face on the CV has to be in double quotes. And it's just the file path, and I use relative file path. And then in my setup function code chunk, I source the R script that actually has all the tribbles in it, so all the data. And I source that so that I get all the environmental variables of those tribbles. I suppress all warnings and everything, so I don't want any text appearing in the CV that shouldn't be there. Load some packages. It's just complaining because I haven't loaded it yet. But yeah, so it's these basic functions, detailed entries and, is it brief entries? I think I just use detailed entries for everything. But yeah, so you have three main functions. You got detailed entries, brief entries, and bibliography entries. Those are the three main powerful functions that really drive these CVs. You get, with brief entries, you get a pain of having to type things. You get data, which, if you just have the object like I'm doing here, you can just pipe the object into the function. So you can ignore this one basically. But what, when, and with, these are the three main arguments in the brief entries. And with detailed entries, undo. With detailed entries, you get all of these: with, what, why, when, where. And so I found that a little bit confusing with which parts of this are formatted in which way. And I kind of just made the what's going into the argument the headers of my tribbles, and I made those headers akin to what I would want things to be formatted as. So like for my employment, I have like this main bold thing being like my position and then where I'm working. That would be, my title. The title is my current job title. So with is that giant bold heading. Now my area of like what unit I'm a part of right there, that little like subheading italics stuff is what. The why is all the details. So that would be like all these bullet points. That would be the why. Don't ask me about the argument stuff. I didn't make the package. But the when, and I'm using the glue function here, which glue, you don't get confused by this syntax or what all this means. The glue function is really just, if you've ever done anything with JavaScript, it's template literals. And what that means is you can actually, in a string like this, but inside the curly braces, that means I am expecting to see a variable here. So it's not technically inline R code, but it sort of is. But it's concatenating strings with variable output. And in this case, the when pulls out the variable of start month, start year, and then adds this, text arrow thing here, and then end month, end year, and then it removes all NA values. So in the actual data that I have for that, for employment, it would be like, October 2019 to present not applicable because it's just to present. So I don't need a month or year, but for like a previous entry, it could be like November 2018 to October 2019. So because all these entries, and I'll explain more about this in a bit with the why argument, but basically for each position, you have to have the same time range for this for each entry, otherwise it gets wonky. But that's why I have multiple repeating entries where the only thing differing is the why section or the detail, that bullet point, because everything gets grouped under that title. And you can look at, like, again, all this is on GitHub. You can poke through my CV and what I have on here and see what's going on and analyze what's connected to where and why if I don't explain it sufficiently. Or if you have any questions, you can just ask me a question. But basically, the when is just a glue function of doing a template literal and inputting those values of month, year to month, year. If there's any not applicables, it removes them. So for anything that's to present, end month will receive the text present, and then this being an NA will just not exist. So that way you get these dates that look like October 2019 to present or date to a date. And that's how I did that with the glue function. And then the where is this location in red. So that's how I made the column headers of the tribbles something that I understood, and then line them up to these arguments in the functions so that I could better make sense of which things are pointing to where. And then these are not the order of the functions or the arguments as you call them. Normally it's something different, I believe. Vitae detail. Oops. Come on, Vim. So normally it goes what, when, with, where, why, and that order doesn't work with how I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it from like title, where, the bullets, and then when and where. So I'm thinking like, almost completely top down, really. But yeah, so that's how I'm thinking about it. So that's how I lay these out, because you can call the arguments in any order. So I change the arguments and I change the inputs, and this is like what it produces. Now, each of these sections is an H1 header, and then I just called detailed entries, fed it some data, and then everything under that header is all the data from a single tribble. So then I do it again with education, and it's the exact same function, different inputs that display different data, but it's still the same sort of formatting. So it's consistent formatting across everything. Now, to get things to do different stuff, like I didn't want bullet points for each of the languages. I wanted just like a single line, because I didn't want to have it all like broken out and make my CV an extra page just for a single like floating, letter for a language or something. So I wanted it to just be like this. So instead of doing a Y, I did a title. I just put it all in that area. So you can see how I like changed the inputs to the different functions so that it would display the things the way I wanted them to. And that's really like, I didn't even use the brief entries function. I really just used detailed entries and then just left things like this and put the same inputs that way. And the tribbles that feed this are, that's a long one there. But you could see like for my project, or let's just do certifications. So like my area is, what area I have certifications in. And then this is the detail or the why. And you can see how my column headers coincide with the actual function arguments in a way that makes more sense. And, it's on GitHub, so you can feel free to fork my repo and then change all the tribble data and make it your own, and then change the data as you please. But I mean, this entire CV is really just these functions and these code chunks. Certifications under the certification header, into detailed entries, the column headers feeding the arguments. And that's basically this is my CV right here, this small little bit of text. And I break the page there because it's a little bit of an overflow. But yeah, this is all that runs my CV. So really, the functions remain the same. There's only a couple functions. The data is really what is important, and that's the tribbles. So with tribbles, I liked using this instead of like a CSV file or some sort of external file. You could do an API service, like if you want to figure out how to connect LinkedIn or use the ORCID functions and have an ORCID profile, you could do that, because there is another function, bibliography entries, that like this, where it can actually do, if you don't get it from ORCID, I think there's a way of getting it from ORCID, and there's a template for Vitae that has, let's just create a new template, because once you load the Vitae package, you can from template, let's do awesome CV, okay, and it'll give you like a template for Marie Curie. And there's this whole thing about here. This is using the ORCID ID, I think, get publications, Curie.bib. So, this is all just to write a bibliography. You can ignore this, but basically if you feed bibliography entries a bibliography file or .bib file, then using this would actually create a CV with all the bibliography entries at the bottom. So let's knit this, if it will let me knit. I'm not sure what it's doing at the moment. Oh, it's still compiling. So here's like the Marie Curie template CV, and here's all the publications. This is what is fed from the bib file. So it just writes this bib file, and all of these publications are at the end of the CV. So if you write a lot of like papers or something, you can have all of your stuff cited in a bibliography file. If you follow Luke Smith's channel, or I'm not sure if I have mine loaded yet, but there's the functions for the get bib. Let's see, v.local get bib. So like using this script will get you, if you have the DOI number of something, you can do this, and then you can test it and send this text to your bib file, and then call that bib file or make a bib file, et cetera, et cetera. So there's different things you can do for like publications to add those to your resume or your CV. So that's really the three main functions: brief, detailed entries, and bibliography entries. And you can use that to just take a bib file, boom, there you go. There's a bib file. The bib file has all the formatting you need to have the entries displayed. And really, that's all there is to this data-driven CV. So understanding tribbles. So a tribble is a row-wise tibble, and it's a function. So tribble, and then you feed it. I like to break the line, and then each header, everything is separated by commas. So each row and each value is separated by commas. But you have a tilde character that starts off the tribble column header, and each column header has a tilde character. You break that, and then every line has all the arguments that go to each of those columns, and each thing is broken out by commas. Now you do have to, of course, have double quotes around the text arguments. But if you have values that you don't want to have anything displayed, you can just put NA values, and then when you actually knit your document together, you can actually remove the NA values. If you have functions like glue for this, you can remove NAs, or they just won't display anything. Like for certifications, I have all this stuff, but for certifications here, I have a lot of NAs. They're just not put in there, so you just won't see anything displayed for certifications like for these. So that's how, like, you can just negate values. You don't have to put anything, but you can just leave stuff out with inputting NA values. But then after you input all of your values, everything's comma separated, quoted that needs to be, NAs if applicable, and all your headers have tilde characters, and this is a tribble. You close it off, assign it to a variable, and then I have all of these tribbles in a single R script that is sourced at the beginning of my document. And I'm using the here package to do relative directory referencing for my R project that is this CV. Basically just a good way of organizing your R projects. And I will cover that package and all these other packages as I continue to do this series. The here package is a really great one for directory management. Definitely use that one. But that is basically the CV, the data-driven CV. You have all this YAML metadata. You have functions that feed tibbles into these arguments. And then the tibbles that just contain your organized data. Now, I was going to say, each position, you will have multiple lines if you have multiple details. So the way you can think about this is at the top here. For my current employment, I have this title, or this where, the title, all this information, and I have one bullet point, this bullet point. So for each bullet point, this can be considered one entry. But if you want to have multiple bullet points, you have to have multiple entries. But if each of these pieces of data, each of these four sections right here are all the same, then all the bullet points get consolidated under one single heading, which is why I have all of these things that are exactly the same until you get to the details right here. And then all of these are what's different. So when you do things that are all the same, like in all the data that leads up to the Y or detail area, then what gets compiled is a list of bullet points under a section. And that is why I have my tribbles outlined this way. So you can poke around with this on GitHub if you'd like. You can fork it. You can just try a bare bones template from the Vitae package and just create a new R Markdown document with template. And there's a bunch of different formats. I'm currently using Awesome CV, but there's a couple others that you can try. Those are the three main functions. And yeah, play around with this. It's a really great way of creating a very easy to maintain, data-driven CV. It took me about 2 days to really get everything formatted, hammered out, and to get all my data into this the way I wanted to. And in the end, by creating this project, putting it on GitHub, and then sending that to the enrollment counselor, I immediately had my resume just like, oh yeah, you definitely have enough programming experience to be accepted to this software engineering program. So yay, data-driven CVs. So that is the Vitae package. Play around with it. Let me know what you do with it. If you have discover anything cool or interesting, or if you modify the LaTeX template, you can poke around with that too. But yeah, CVs. So that's what I did for my enrollment and to create a new data-driven CV. And it's on my GitHub if you like. So all the links will be in the description below, and have fun playing around with that. Bye.